Okay, we are live already. Welcome. Introduction. Uncle Jed, over to you.
Right. Yes. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. If you're joining us, thank you very much, for coming through to the program today, where we're going to be discussing the issue of constitutionalism versus constitutionality. And helping me with that discussion and with that topic is going to be Mr. Dewa Mavhinga. Most of you guys, I think you know him. He was one of the guys that appeared on the select committee in America, discussing the sanctions issues in Zimbabwe. And that he's a human rights fighter, human rights activist, and his work is well known. He has spearheaded the defending of people's rights, and I welcome him to the program. Mr. Mavhinga, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Uncle Jed, for having me on this show, and thanks to my brother, Mr. Mawere. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And also, I've got Mr. Mawere. He's not stranger, to you guys. Mr. Mawere, I just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the listeners, and then we'll get into the show.
Good evening, listeners and viewers, wherever you are. Welcome.
Right. Yes. I understand we're broadcasting different platforms. We are on YouTube as well as we are on Facebook. We are coming live to you. Right. So as we are building up the crowd, hoping that we get people that join us on the discussion today. And I'm also appealing to you guys, those who are watching us tonight. You can also share this program on your Facebook profiles or in any page that you're affiliated to, because what we want to have here is a conversation that is inclusive, a conversation that allows everybody to join in, to come in into the conversation and share ideas, share views. We are going to be allowing people to come through as well. If you've got anything that you want to share on the issues that we're going to be discussing tonight, you'll be allowed to be coming through. Just request for the link for you to come through. I'm going to be also opening up the lines. If you want to call in as well, we'll be in a position to be doing that. Give you the opportunity to call in and contribute to the topic tonight. But whilst I'm waiting for you guys to come through, I just want to acknowledge every listener or every viewer that has come through as of now. Right. I acknowledge you, and I thank you very much for taking your time to be on the program. Right. So we have Mr. Mavhinga here on the spotlight. Mr. Dewa, Mr. Mavhinga, Dewa Mavhinga. How do you want me to, refer to you?
Just Dewa is fine. You can call me Dewa. That's okay.
Yes. Dewa is fine. Thank you very much, Dewa. So, Dewa, we are here tonight, and the topic that we are talking about is constitutionalism versus constitutionality. We just want to unpack that. So if I can begin by asking you a question on your understanding of the issue of constitutionalism and constitutionality.
Okay. Thanks. I think when you talk of constitutionality, you are talking of the technical ticking of the box or compliance with the law to say is a particular law within the four corners of a constitution. That's it. But when you talk of constitutionalism, you are looking at the values and principles that say authority is derived from the people. Okay? So if a piece of law might technically be viewed as constitutional within the framework of constitutionality, it might fail to pass the test of constitutionalism when it is not embodied or imbued with the values of the Constitution. Okay, so when we talk of deriving authority from the people, I'll give you an example. An example is this. Let's take, if a particular law is viewed as being oppressive and ultra vires the Constitution, okay? Because people have gone to the court for interpretation. And then the response from a government in power, okay, the ruling party, is that, okay, we will simply amend the Constitution to provide legality to what the court has found to be illegal. That is constitutionality, but it does not meet the test of constitutionalism. Constitutionalism means that you must respect those values and not use your authority or power to ride roughshod or to override, constitutional values.
So, according, to that understanding that you have given, yes. So, just bear with me, for a second. I'm trying to get, to the Facebook page, and then ensure that we don't get any interruptions here. So if you can just bear with me, right? Yes, I think I am good, right there. So according to what you said, and then putting it into the context of our situation, I know you have always been a person who advocated for the respect of human rights. You've advocated for people to be treated in a manner that that goes with what our constitution is saying. So taking examples from our country, where do we stand on this issue of constitutionalism in the manner that you've explained right there?
Well, I must admit that Zimbabwe has a positive constitutional framework from the May 2013 constitution. You remember that this was a constitution that was drawn up. It is called a homegrown constitution. I have it right here. It's called a homegrown constitution. So it is a good framework, right? But the challenge comes when we talk of implementation of the values that are reflected or enshrined in the Constitution. So you would find that when you talk of the Bill of Rights, Chapter 4 of this Constitution, do Zimbabweans enjoy rights? When you talk of property rights, when you talk of freedom of expression, whatever rights you can think of, access to food, to health, to what extent do ordinary people realize and live the assumed reality that is in this document? This is where you see that there is a huge gap between what is on paper and the lives of people in Zimbabwe. And this is the gap that, as a human rights lawyer and activist, I am pushing to close, to say we need people to enjoy the rights that are said to be their rights as reflected in our documents. And so many of our laws have not been aligned or brought to line with the values and principles that are in the Constitution. And this is the challenge that we need to look at today.
Right. So that is the challenge that we need to be looking at, today. Right. If I can put you in on hold, right there. Let me bring in Mr. Mawere. Mr. Mawere, good evening. You've already introduced yourself to the viewers, tonight. And as I have explained, before, we are talking about the issue of constitutionalism and constitutionality. You've heard what Dewa said. Do you care to, to add on to what they said or to respond, to what they said?
Yeah, Mr. Mavhinga, there are allegations made against you, and to some people, you have now acquired a new brand called Sanctions Beggar. that you traveled all the way to the US. You were seen live pushing for sanctions against your own country. How do you deal with such allegations on a day-to-day basis? When you meet people, you visit Zimbabwe, is it pleasant or unpleasant?
Thank you, Ms. Mwere. Look, I'm a human rights lawyer, and what I know is that countries have their own sovereign interests. And my submission before the US Senate Committee on Foreign Relations was directly about the human rights environment in Zimbabwe. And my submission was that at that point, and this was on 12 December 2017, barely 2 months after the military coup in Zimbabwe. And the question was whether or not there was a sufficient change or in terms of human rights respect for the lifting of targeted sanctions on individuals. And my submission was that what is important for Zimbabwe is for irreversible reforms to take place, for a demonstration of commitment and respect to the Constitution. And at that point, it was not there. There were others, of course, who were team ED and fully supportive and excited. And the chant in those days was, give ED a chance. And I was saying, what is important is not to assume or to work on assumptions of goodwill, but is to have clear steps on the ground about how to put into practice the so many promises that came from the government at that point, who were saying it's a new dispensation, it's the dawn of a new democracy. My challenge was, where are the steps that reflect the second republic, the new dispensation, the dawn of democracy? And of course, I know that the issue of sanctions is really an issue of largely propaganda in Zimbabwe. But when you talk of countries against which there are real economic and trade sanctions, you're talking about Iran or Cuba, but not Zimbabwe. You will recall that, for example,
so when you say that when you say the issue of sanctions in Zimbabwe is likely, propaganda, are you saying that there are no sanctions that have been leveled against Zimbabwe?
I am saying that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I am saying, what are they are targeted sanctions against individuals, and most recently, there were sanctions against Owen Mube, a minister of state security, and Sanya from the army. But these are individuals. There are no nationwide, countrywide trade sanctions. In fact, there is nothing that stops Zimbabwe from trading with the US, for example, as a country. So, but because of the need for a scapegoat, it's often the easy route out to say, you don't want to look at the massive corruption in Zimbabwe that is responsible for, the collapse of the economy. It's easy to have this excuse, this propaganda excuse of the so-called sanctions, which are really phantom. It's like a topology that everyone talks about, but no one has ever seen. So I would challenge those that say there are sanctions, targeted trade sanctions, economic sanctions, to give me clear examples. I know that there has been talk about Zidera, but we are talking of the new dispensation under ED Mnangagwa. So when we talk of Zidera, potentially, it could be viewed as a broad sanction measure because the US is required to vote against Zimbabwe in terms of the IMF and other international monetary institutions. But Zimbabwe has defaulted on its payments to the IMF since the 2000s, and therefore had not been eligible in any case for any loans in that regard. So that measure was never invoked. So that is not true that that measure has been used at all. So by and large, what you have are targeted measures. But the reality is that what has crippled the Zimbabwe economy is massive corruption. Look at culture. Look at the diamonds from Marange. Where have the resources gone? But people don't want to talk about those things that we control as Zimbabweans because it is convenient to blame others, not ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Right. If you can, hold right there. Let me welcome. Is it my boy?
It's my boy.
Yeah, my boy.
Yes, my boy. Yes, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm just here to add the spice. Dewa Magadi.
Hi, my boy Mnofalere.
Thank you for having me. I've got tons of questions. I'll join in later. For now,
thank you very much. Yes, I'm going to revert, I'm going to come back, to you in a few moments, and I just want to go back to Dewa. Dewa, we have said, Kuti, if there's anyone out there who has been affected by these phantom sanctions or these so-called sanctions, you are challenging them. You are challenging them to come forward and challenge you on that assertion that you've made to say, Kuti, the sanctions that we are talking about here. These are targeted sanctions, and these are not sanctions that are targeted at the generality of Zimbabwe, and it's not affecting the Zimbabwe people, right? I don't know. I can give you. There's an example, that I want to give you, and I'm interested in how you're going to be responding, to this, right? I've been in the UK for more than 20 years now. I've got no relations to anyone in the ZANU-PF government. The government of Robert Mugabe back then, the government of Emerson Mnangagwa, now. I've got no relations in whatsoever. I'm just an individual, right? I came, to the UK for greener pastures, myself, right? I was never sponsored, by the government. I was never sponsored, by anyone. But I can tell you of an instance or an event, that happened to me in 2004. I was about to go to university, and I wanted to apply, for a bank account. I went into Barclays Bank to open a bank account. I completed the application form. I was invited for an interview. I went, to that interview because the account, that I wanted was a current account, and with the current account as a student, it comes, with all different kinds of perks, including, you being given, a loan in overdraft, stuff, stuff like that. And then I was refused an account. I was refused a current account. I was denied the opportunity to open the current account on the basis that Zimbabwe was on sanctions. Me, I am just an ordinary person. I don't have anyone. I'm not on the sanctions list. But I was told, back then. And my case is not only peculiar to me. It's not a case that I'm saying is a case, that only affects me. But I've got a lot of people that have been treated, the same thing. How can we reconcile that? Your position to say these are targeted, sanctions. There's a list of people who are being targeted, by these, sanctions. But here I am, an ordinary person. Give me an example to say, good, I was denied a bank account. Yes, that is on sanctions.
Yeah, can I respond? Yeah. So
yes.
I think clearly that was an error because there is no record of the Barclays Bank, which in fact was also operating in Zimbabwe until recently.
Yes.
In 2005, I came into the UK in 2005 and I easily opened an account with Barclays Bank in Essex. So no issue at all. But what I'm saying is that what you needed to have, which unfortunately might not have been possible, is which sanction, which particular law is applicable, so that we know what they are talking about, because there is no such measure. What I know is that in 2003, prior to that, former President Mugabe had unilaterally withdrawn Zimbabwe from the Commonwealth.
Yes.
And that caused a lot of problems. But to suggest, as perhaps the tailor that you spoke to, that Zimbabwe was on sanctions, and therefore a Zimbabwean national could not open an account in the UK, was a mistake of fact and law. It's not correct.
Right. I hear you. Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Thank you
If
very
I
much.
may come in before you
Right.
go,
Okay.
I just wanted to chime in there on the issue of sanctions, since
Yes,
we
come on.
are in the literacy comfort zone. There were sanctions, European sanctions, that would have affected Uncle Jed.
Yes.
A lot of people were affected. One was a lot of banks made errors. So there was an error, but there were Zimbabwe sanction regulations.
Right.
In the United Kingdom, but that's post the era that you're referring to. But there was some form of sanctions which have since been lifted by European Union. But there were certain restrictions that had blanketed and were affecting. I remember several of my relatives opening accounts in my name with several banks so that I could give them bank accounts. So there was something in the system. You had to go through a process where you clear your name, because they were all UK was also a ZANU-PF looting cartel's headquarters for hiding their loot. So there was that issue as well. So I think it's broad as to what exactly was it that was affecting you, but there are Zimbabwe sanction regulations that were specified by the European Union. But as to whether they affect Zimbabwe in trading and doing business at this juncture, no, because it's only the military and Grace Mugabe who are still on sanctions. I remember Leo Mugabe got removed a few years back within this past decade. But there were certain individuals that were targeted by the European Union itself. So I just wanted to chime in there.
But Uncle Jed.
Yes.
Barclays itself was operating in Zimbabwe at that point. You know that?
Yes, it was. I am fully aware of that. The reason why I've given that example of myself is back then still we knew that these were targeted sanctions. Sanctions that we targeted. And but I wanted to bring in this dimension to say, even though these were targeted sanctions means the list of people, but there were other people that we collect me as an example. Just wanted to highlight that as well, to say yes, we might say we have got targeted sanctions, but at the end of the day we are also like what my sister said, or what you have alluded to, it can be an error, or it can be an overzealous on the part of that individual who are dealing with, and they denied the opportunity to have that current account. But you see, these are real life issues that we are facing in ordinary Zimbabweans. So when we say that these sanctions are not affecting the ordinary Zimbabweans, somebody that has come across that can begin to differ with you, because they are saying no, I was affected.
Uncle Jed, now we are the idea was to talk about constitutionalism.
Yes, I was
Mr. Mavhinga can deal with the other matters. We can
Mr.
deal
Mawera,
with
you opened that door.
we are trying to move towards media excellence, so that if we come to a subject,
or a topic.
Let's just deal with it. Mr. Mavhinga, you are saying that when you went to the Senate subcommittee, at the time you were not convinced that the ED government could live up to the promise of the kind of obligations required to lift Zimbabwe out of the problems. Today is 2020, the month of April, on the 25th. Are you convinced that Zimbabwe has moved towards the ideal that you think it should be? Zimbabwe is off the that you, as a human rights barometer checker, you would like it to be?
Well,
Who I told you. Yeah.
Ms. Mawere, looking back, and you asked about how do I feel as a human rights lawyer. You know, it's not an easy work, but I am vindicated. When I look back, I say I was correct, that this team was lying to the people. There are no reforms. Nothing has happened. I am holding here the ZANU-PF manifesto for 2018. And in it, there are many promises that were made to the people of Zimbabwe.
Right.
And few of them have been fulfilled. In fact, I have received many messages from people who said, you were right. We thought we could give them a chance, but you were right about the dangers of ignoring the basics. Because we have been saying, and we continue to say, promises are not enough. People don't eat promises. You need to deliver in terms of hard reforms. You can promise heaven on earth, but where, in terms of the reality, are those rights that people have been promised? Where is the access to food? Over half the population of Zimbabwe, about 8 million people, have no access to food. They are facing starvation. Access to health. Where is the state-of-the-art health facilities that people spoke about? But you know, the problem with leaders in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe government, summed up in what President Mnangagwa said when he addressed his party supporters, the young people, and said, go and obliterate them on social media, on Twitter.
Yes.
The assumption that you can dispatch a militia of Varakashi on Twitter and hope that propaganda will deliver results. It will not. You cannot run a nation on the basis of propaganda.
Dewa.
Right.
Yes, my boy.
Right.
If I may come
my
in.
boy, yes. My boy, if you can come in.
Yes, my boy was sorry, I forgot I put my mic up. My boy warukuda kuti, if it's about the Constitution and the following of the Constitution, is there anything in the Constitution that holds a political party liable for lying in its manifesto? A lot of politicians everywhere in the UK, every politician uses the public services, and in particular promises to fund the police and the NHS with big zeros after the figure in literally every election campaign. Is there in the Zimbabwean constitution provision to challenge legally, to say Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa akanyepa? Who enforces? Where is that enforcement? Where is that channel? That's my first question. My second question is towards the last part of your statement about unleashing Varakashi. Was he speaking as a party, or was he speaking as the president? And if he was speaking as a party, is it not the norm these days where party loyals go out on social media and push their agenda, and that's agreed upon in whatever scenario, in whatever territory? So those are my two questions. One, the enforcing of a manifesto. Saka ainyenga ka kuti awane azoti the voice of the people is the voice of God achibhabhadzira apinda zvinototi uchabvunza kuti ko baba mota yamakauya nayo kuzorora iripi watomumbaka. Who challenged it?
Right. Okay. Give him the opportunity to respond.
To answer.
my boy.
Yes, sir.
Nyika yeZimbabwe haina kunyengwa, yakabatwa chibharo.
All right. I agree with you.
We are not talking about, just the manifesto of a political party, but we are talking about a governing party, a ruling party. Now, when you talk of a governing party, it's entirely different from, for example, asking Advocate Nelson Chamisa to account for his promises. We are now talking about the government in power. Now, in terms of the Constitution, you will recall, if you were following the events back in November 2017, my boy, that in fact there was an attempt to plot the coup in terms of a constitutional process. And the process was called an impeachment process. Now, an impeachment process was premised on Section 97 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which then speaks of, the different conditions under which a president can be removed from office, among which would include a failure to uphold the Constitution of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
So technically, there is that basis to hold a government or a president accountable. But it was abused because in reality, we were talking of the security forces taking over and then finding a way to provide a soft landing to a coup.
Right. My first question is answered. Yeah.
Right. So let me just go back to the constitutional questions. If we look at the government of Zimbabwe today and the parliament today, do you have confidence that the checks and balances contemplated in a constitutional democracy are in place in Zimbabwe today?
The short question is no. There are no proper and solid balances or checks and balances or a separation of powers, because Zimbabwe has got power concentrated in the executive president. And this is why I would say people like Professor Love Momaduku and others who were in the National Constitutional Assembly, who opposed the adoption of the new constitution in 2013, when there was a referendum, they had some points, because there is too much power in one office or in one person.
Right.
Which then weakens the other structures. You do not have a meaningful parliament to exercise checks on the president. For example, you do not have a strong judiciary independent of the presidency, because the presidency wields so much power, and the security forces, the security sector is weighted in on the side of the presidency in a way that then tilts power completely in favor of the presidency. So there is no balance. And to then exercise constitutionalism within that framework becomes very difficult. This is why we have seen that over the years, I think since 1980, the security forces have been the sort of stockholders and deciders of the political fate of Zimbabwe. So there is no social contract to speak about between the citizens and those that govern. Those that govern, like Matema Kanda and others, derive their authority from the barracks. This is why they don't care about citizens. This is why they can ride roughshod and ignore the needs of the people of Zimbabwe. Because for them, it is about he who controls the military controls the politics.
Right. So, in other words, what you're saying is, the purpose of the constitution is so that, we avoid situations of arbitrary government, whereby somebody is ruling according to their choice, according, to their will. So, is this the situation that is currently prevailing, in our Zimbabwe? And if that is the situation that is currently, prevailing in our Zimbabwe, what then is the role of us as citizens in overcoming this?
Well, I think it's important to talk about these things and to try and be as objective as possible. Because look, Uncle Jed,
Yes.
this constitution, with its own shortcomings, did try to achieve some balance on paper, but it has not been implemented. I will give you an example. If you look at the abuses by the military, the killings of citizens, the shooting with live ammunition on the streets of Harare on the 1st of August 2018, in January 2019, people were shot and killed, right, by the soldiers in uniform. Okay? Now, in the Constitution, Section 210, there is a provision that there must be an independent complaints mechanism.
Right.
That must be created to receive complaints by the public on the conduct of the security forces, so that there can be remedial action, there can be compensation. People in uniform can be arrested and be sent to jail if they have committed abuses. But you know what? This has never been implemented. And this is why you need the MPs, at least the opposition and others in parliament who are progressive, to speak about these things, to say, why don't we have an independent complaints mechanism? There was a lot of money that was wasted in the Motlande Commission of Inquiry into the violence, the post-election violence, August 2018. Now, all the recommendations that were brought forward, including an acknowledgement that the security forces and the police had shot and killed 6 people, nothing came of it. They said people must be arrested. Nothing happened. So there are 2 levels of disregard for the Constitution. One level is this, that the authorities say, okay, let's have it on paper. Okay? In the Constitution, it is there. But in reality, it does not exist. So people are deprived of their rights simply because there are no mechanisms to protect them. The other level is simply that now, if people are aggrieved, they can go to court. Anyone can approach the court if their rights are violated, right? But do you know that there has been a tendency to completely ignore court orders?
So, if I may come in,
yeah, if you can, hold, right there, my boy. Right, I see. You want to come in right there.
Yes, please. It's all good that we are here. We are championing constitutionalism. We are talking. I think we are in agreement with what Dewa has been saying for the past half hour. My question is, what frustrates me is we have this knowledge as a society, as a people of Zimbabwe, and among those people are activists like yourself and others in Zimbabwe who have even been beaten up, victimized, in really worse than anything we can imagine, worse than short of death, the ones that are still there. The journalists are there, and as soon as they get fired, they come on the other side, they become activists. But what is it that lacks in Zimbabwe? We saw what happened with the professionals in Sudan. What is it that is missing, that is not bringing us to the level? Look at what we did when Ivan Mawarire just said, I just want school fees. I want to be able to afford food. Those basic, he demanded those basic human rights without any party affiliation. And the whole country, or the majority of Harare, what we saw of Harare, resonated with his statements. But when it comes to actually taking that further, where is it that we're falling short? Because all this knowledge of what we're being deprived of, we all have PhDs in that. We have mastered it, and nobody can question us on that. But in terms of us taking that next step to say, I am going to write about it. I'm going to go to the highest level at the United Nations. I am going to do this. Why is it's only Dewa featuring? Why is it's only Uncle Jed broadcasting about it, and you've got 30 people viewing one night, the other night you'll have 1,000 when you say, oh, there's been a sex scandal? What is it among our people that
my boy,
Right.
issues?
Yes, right.
My boy, I can respond.
Yes, you can go ahead.
You know, one thing about Zimbabweans and the politics in Zimbabwe. You know, since before independence, you know, we are celebrating 40 years of independence.
Yes.
Zimbabwe has been a very violent place in terms of controlling the opinion of the people. So the use of fear and terror, that is one of the key weapons that has been used by the ruling party in Zimbabwe since 1980. You look at how the Gukura Matebeleland dealt with the ZAPU, Joshua Ngomo issues. You look at how the opposition, including Zoom, how these people were haunted, tortured, and driven into jails.
Right.
With the MDC since the founding in September 1999. In 2000, the land invasions, the violence that was there, involving the security forces. 2008, the killing of more than 200 MDC supporters. The violence is extreme. My boy, if you go into Zimbabwe, to rural areas, and try and talk about their rights, as I have done, you will feel a palpable fear.
I must disagree with you there. I did agree. I would agree with you in 2008. But from what I experienced in the past 2 years, I'm very much in touch with people in the rural, in some of the rural communities, especially Marsh East and Marsh Central. I speak to them every week. And if you look at, I went in July 2018, just before the elections, in Musana communal lands. There was no ZANU-PF poster. There was Chamisa. But the MP right now there is a ZANU-PF MP, a ZANU-PF councillor. But there was no, and I was sponsoring a football and a netball tournament. And people were openly talking. So there's an element of perception that you are clearly, you also share, that opposition people still think that it's still scary in the rural areas. If you go further down to Marsh East, Wedza, Macheke area, people are talking about opposition and they're fed up, but there's nobody from these activist groups that is getting there, is what I'm seeing and sensing. So what is it that takes us there to say, now as the people, let's go to the next level? We saw it work with Ivan. We saw it work. Ivan shut down the country.
Are you proposing unconstitutional methods, or
no?
You are?
I'm saying let's come up with solutions, not talk about what we already know is failing.
No, my boy, what I wanted to say, if I can come in?
Yes.
You know what? The fear is real, and the violence of January and February 2019 was extreme.
I was there. I attended on the 17th of January.
And how many people were killed? More than 17 people died.
Right.
And more than 17 women were raped. Some of them being raped. So the violence is extreme. And even if you take the example of Pastor Ivan Mawarire, the personal grief that he suffered because of that stance, I sat down with Pastor Mawarire. I invited him to my church in Joburg to talk to Zimbabweans and others there. And people wept as he narrated what he had gone through. You understand? I spoke to his relatives as his house was being raided by forces
The
in the odd hours of the night.
Mm.
So, and he had a young family.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality is that there is a lot of fear that is there. But beyond that, we need to understand and go back to the pillars of the Constitution to say Zimbabwe lacks strong, independent institutions. So when you talk of elections and the outcomes, it's not just about the fear factor.
It's even the rigging
of the security forces. But there is also a partisan stance that says even the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is largely compromised. So, my boy, you cannot judge the political awareness of the people in Uganda on the basis of election outcomes, because they are not a reflection of their views necessarily.
Yeah, this is my point. That when you speak to them at an open event, which is not a political event, you get the truth and the gist. Those fears and intimidations, I'm looking for a remedy, because year in, year out, we are very educated in this information.
My boy, we can have a show. We can have a show where people can have personal experiences in terms of remedies. What we to provoke is this idea that we are a constitutional state. And if you look at Mr. Dewa, Mr. Mavhinga, if you look at after 40 years of independence, do you see any homegrown domestic constitutional advocates like you? Because some people are misunderstanding why the opposition. Why were you on the same panel? Why was ZANU-PF not there? And why are you? And ZANU-PF is not here. And all doing is extending the envelope from the Supreme Court judgment, which dealt with constitutionalism and how far we can take that envelope, taking on from what you have done. Because a lot when domestic institutions are dysfunctional, for a foreign party to then intervene and say, follow your own constitution. And it's a positive thing if we are constitutionalists.
Thank you. Can I respond, Mr. Mawere?
Yeah,
right.
In this regard, I have some criticism for the opposition, because now look, we must be clear on whether or not, for example, we have a functional and independent judiciary, right? Now, if we say, as I do, that the judiciary in Zimbabwe is compromised, then it follows that we should not give it legitimacy by appearing before it and then complaining after. This is, for me, unacceptable, because you must be clear about where you stand. You cannot say we are officials of the court, which is compromised, but we hope that it will give us a favorable outcome. Now, there is the principle of the exhaustion of domestic remedies that is applicable in law, which simply says that if you feel that there are no domestic remedies available for you within the country, including within the judiciary system, this is where you are justified in seeking is at a higher level. So, for example, if you go to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, they would want to know whether or not you had exhausted your remedies within Zimbabwe. Now, the problem with the opposition in Zimbabwe is that it's not clear where they stand with regards to the independence of the judiciary. Are they saying that the judiciary is independent because they have appeared before the courts? Or are they saying it's not independent? They must be very clear. And if they are saying it's not independent, it must be done before they have filed anything, and they should stop filing these things.
Yeah.
Because anyone who loses is a sore loser.
Right. So on the issue of constitutionality, on the issue of constitutionality, taking what is happening, in the opposition, whereby that is an issue that is, that is an issue that stands out there, to be tested on the issue of, constitutionality. What then does that say when it comes to this organization? Is it that what is happening with the, with constitutionalism is sort of, filtered through even our institutions, whereby even the issue of constitutionality, right there, it is also a reflection of what is happening with our, with our constitution, our national, constitution.
Yes.
Right.
I want to agree that there is a big problem there. And I don't know to what extent it is a reflection of the nation's upbringing within a context of a lack of constitutionalism.
Right.
I think it was Nietzsche who said, if you stare too long into the abyss, at one point the abyss will stare back into you, and you might begin to reflect that. And so it is very important for the opposition, for political organizations, to respect constitutionalism and to be clear about issues, including about what happens with their disputes. If you decide to take your disputes to a court, you must then be prepared for the outcomes that come from that court. Some have said, possibly correctly so, that, well, look, the most important court is the people's court. But then, if it is the most important court, then you should simply stick with the people's court. But it seems people are stuck about what really it means to have dysfunctional structures in the country that do not deliver on constitutionalism. And this is where there is need for serious self-reflection to get to a point where people are very clear about the shortcomings and what needs to be done to address those gaps.
Right. So here the people, Mr. Mawere, before you come in. So we are talking of an organization that had people that went, to America before, the select, committee, and spoke about the issue of constitutionalism. And then we are getting them in their own organization, where we are seeing signs of these people not wanting to follow what their constitution is saying. What then can we make of this, given what is happening? If you were a person who was looking from the outside, if you were America, a person who was looking from the outside, what conclusions can you draw in such a scenario, whereby you've heard these people calling themselves champions of democracy, people that say we want to abide, we want everything to be about the constitution, and then you have them at an institutional level not adhering to their constitution.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you? What is your take on that?
My take is that, look, there is need for clarity in terms of the rule of law, respect for the rule of law, and the values therefore. And I have said repeatedly that this clarity is missing, because when you talk of the rule of law, you talk of respecting the independence of different pillars if they exist.
Right.
If you have a dispute with regards to the interpretation of your constitution, and if you decide that there is an independent body that should be the arbiter and interpret that constitution, before you go in, as you argue, you must also prepare yourself to respect what the arbiter says with regards to the interpretation.
Right.
Now, if there is a view, and this view is emerging from some quarters in the opposition, that in fact the courts are not independent arbiters, right? It brings then the confusion and the problem that I think must be addressed. The problem of why do you give legitimacy to a platform that you say is not independent?
I hear you.
At the point of the outcome.
Right, I hear you. Right, let me revert.
Are you Are you proposing temporary lockdown of the court? Allow for this? And secondly, there are people who believe that the integrity of the courts has been eroded. Here you have two scenarios, one involving MDC succession. The second one involves ZANU-PF succession.
Mm-hmm.
And now that the court has ruled on succession and the Supreme Court judge has made new law that actually there is nothing moot. Even if it's moot, a justiciable dispute must be disposed of by the court. And the litigants, however mosquito they may be, they need audience of the court. And the court can rule in their favor because the biggest condom in the country. He has already been away and he is not even on his social media, on any news. And the judgment was in his favor.
Yes.
Then they are saying the sentence of President Mnangagwa to the position of ZANU-PF president and the state president was tainted by the same conduct. Yet, the Supreme Court Chief Justice said, I see no evil, hear no evil, and Mugabe resigned. It's like saying a woman who had a bullet close to her had consensual sex. Is it okay that the judgment of the MDC is left alone, tested as new law? You as a constitutional expert.
Well, I think the issue is political organizations and political leaders have their minds about where they stand in relation to these institutions, including the courts. I am not proposing or suggesting for a moment that there should be a shutdown of the courts or lockdown. But what I'm saying is their opinions must be clear and consistent. If there is a view that the courts of Zimbabwe are in fact a kangaroo court or they are kangaroo courts, then that must be clear. If they are kangaroo courts, why would you appear before kangaroo courts if not to give them legitimacy? And this is where my problem is.
You are raising a different issue. Mandela appeared for a kangaroo court. He was convicted.
No, but can I respond to that? Because Mandela gave a caveat in the Rivonia trial. He said that he was doing it under protest. It was clear that he was not there by choice. And he made it clear in his address to the court, which is documented. And this has not been, if you look at the Supreme Court judgment, go and read it and show me where it says that there was a clear understanding that they were appearing before a kangaroo court.
In fact, you know, there's two issues that you are raising, Mr. Bawere. You're raising the issue of MDC recent ruling, Supreme Court ruling, which declares Chamisa essentially an illegitimate outfit of MDC. And yet, we are happy as a people, as a country to continue. Yet the same illegitimacy exists in the ascension of E.D. Mnangagwa. What Mr. Mavhinga said, he was provided a soft landing by the military. So at which point these issues that we are raising in this forum right now, at which point do they then get constitutionally enforced in Zimbabwe? How do we get it? Who has the responsibility of saying, apa mati maikupe ndivo legitimate leader? Saka ukuwa mpoko ndivo legitimate leader, or if you're going to legitimize the coup or impeachment. But if you're going to rewind, where is Zimbabwe? Who has got that interest? Is it not the opposition, in the opposition's interest? But what is it that they're afraid of? Kuti vatokone ipapo kuti mutemo uyu kana takuda kuita rule of law tikada kuti titore this ruling, this judgment, then it means kuti zvinoenda back to November 12, 2017, before the coup. When was the coup? The 13th or the 15th? Anyways, but November 12th, Rodzokera settings to there. Where is the court ruling to that effect? Who in opposition is pushing for that effect? Or do they not want to legitimize because the interests of dictatorship, alternative dictatorships are affected? So where are we?
I think it's my boy is quite clear that issues of constitutionalism are a broad subject that go beyond politics and political formations. It needs to have a critical mass of citizens, and this is why I would say I wish we still had that constitutional movement that we founded back in '97, the National Constitutional Assembly, as a grouping of different formations, women's groups, church groups, trade unions, youth groups, students, academics, who came together to say our focus is on constitutionalism and for Zimbabwe to have a broad-based new constitution. That movement is needed because it was not a political party as such. It had political parties. I remember there was Uraya Zembe of what was called ZPP. There was Maima Dankure and others. Now, the challenge was that when most of the leaders within the NCA saw that and felt that they were failing to translate their values and views into policies, and they thought the vehicle to do that would be to form a political party. This is why you found that most of the leaders of the NCA then moved over to form the MDC in September '99 and left a severely weakened NCA, right? And now we do not have that movement. But that is the kind of movement that
the fact that you didn't succeed then means there was fault somewhere. If you think it is a solution
what are those things that we are talking about? What are these failures? What is it exactly that led us to such a situation? And also, now that we have got a new constitution that was born out of 2013 arrangement, and we have got this constitution that you say we need to align that constitution to carry laws. It means getting rid of some of the laws that are there because they are no longer fit for our purpose. And then we have got this issue. There is a vacuum when it comes to the understanding of the constitution amongst the Zimbabwean people. Is indeed that is now the vehicle on that is now what is what has created a platform for some people to want to then dismiss everything that is happening. I can give you an example of what is happening in the MDC. The issue of the constitution in the MDC. There are people that are saying it does not matter. The constitution does not matter. Populism, matter. What matters is the popularity of Nelson Chamisa. CC, Chete Chete is our main man, is our main guy. Forget about what the constitution is saying. And you've got folks like Morgan Komichi who are coming in and say, we've now realized what has happened 2 years ago is an anomaly, something that needs to be rectified. But now there's this animosity that is being created, towards this guy, and it is evident that amongst our people, we are not yet ready to understand this issue of constitutionalism. How can we navigate these murky waters and get to a point whereby our people become conscientized when it comes to the constitution and why constitutionalism matter in our country?
I agree with you, Uncle Jed, and my boy, the NCA did not fail in 99. If you recall, the referendum that we had in February 2000 was actually a victory for the no vote, to say we had not reached the threshold that we needed. The NCA succeeded in initiating and driving what eventually became what we now have in 2013, a new constitution. But what did not survive was the platform, a broad-based platform that was not within the frameworks of political parties.
So there was no plan after success or referendum. There was no plan.
The platform did not survive.
Right.
And this is what is missing today. Uncle Jed, when you talk about what needs to be done, because there is need to begin to talk about constitutionalism, constitutional values, and to educate the masses, people of Zimbabwe, outside of or beyond political platforms. But the challenge that is very difficult is the how politicized the framework is in Zimbabwe, because it's either ZANU-PF or MDC, and
so,
there is no space.
Dewa, if I may hold you on that word, Yokuti, NCA succeeded in 2000 referendum for a no vote, and yet Tatirushanda on a premise Yokuti, because of violence history since the early 80s, it's difficult to push that agenda. But clearly, there is something that had triggered that success. I'm calling it as you put it across. So what is it that causes things to disintegrate before maturity or before the objectives are realized?
Can I respond there, my boy? What happened was that on the 15th of February 2000, former President Mugabe went live on television and said he was accepting the outcomes of the constitutional referendum results, which was a defeat for the government's position. You understand? And the following Monday, the security forces, the war veterans, and ZANU-PF supporters were unleashed in what became the farm invasions, in extreme violence. And it was, do you know the base of those invasions? You know what was the justification? It was because they said the land clause, section 16 in the draft constitution had been rejected, and the blame was put on white commercial farmers. And this is what then was the fight back, the massive backlash of violence, and the police were then deployed, the army and everyone. So the violence became extreme to push back on the gains. It's the same with 2008. My boy, if you recall, in March.
So if I take the success of 2000, now I think we're connecting the dots now, coming to the Second Republic, and how now, back then we didn't have Twitter, we had forums, we were pushing on forums, but we were not as far reaching as we are now. Now the scenario is different. You've even got people from those security forces that are also crying on the side of the people, because when we say security forces, there are people, there are Zimbabweans just like you and I. So if we take that level of commitment to an outcome of constitutionalism, of pushing an agenda for rule of law, while we are conscious of, if you look at the United Kingdom, why it rejected Zimbabwe, it says you need to do reforms. So we need to arm ourselves with knowledge on the rule of law avenue. We want to do this, but this is what we are faced against. Where is the blockage? Now that we are armed with information and we know where the buck stops on the side of junta, We know that Motlante will be called, and how do we now steer towards achieving that constitutionalism success? Because we have the knowledge, we have the platform, we have this 1873. We're talking about it. Where is the gap? Why is it the media?
My boy, let me tell you, the gap is domestic. The gap is in Zimbabwe. Because anything for us to have a successful constitutional movement, it is rooted inside Zimbabwe. For as long as we have not raised the critical mass inside Zimbabwe, we would not achieve. Because remember, I spoke in the US, in Washington DC, and in other places in the UK, in the House of Lords. But the reality is that we need to raise the masses and the tempo back home in Zimbabwe. And this is where the gap is, because the space is constrained. The cost of respecting or advocating for human rights is just too high for people inside Zimbabwe. This is why even and others had to flee. This is why you would find that the people have been tortured, they've been abducted. Tatenda Mombeara abducted. Obet Masaraure. So many, even those that are making jokes about the regime, like Gonyet, they have been abducted and made to drink raw sewage. The cost is simply too high. So what we need is to expose that, to help protect the people inside Zimbabwe, to make it possible for people to come together outside of the partisan or politicized spaces, to simply say, as Zimbabweans, this is what we believe for a constitution, and to reduce the cost of violence. This is why when I'm out of Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in the UK, in the US, I feel it is my duty to speak out, because I know that those inside Zimbabwe may not be able to speak out. I have interviewed 17 women raped in January and February 2019, and they told me they cannot speak out. They told me they cannot even have their faces shown because there will be reprisals. So the violence, the monitoring, the clampdown, the oppression in Zimbabwe needs those outside to help open the spaces and then allow for that critical mass to be built in the country.
Saka, you are not activist.
Right.
You are
Okay.
sorry.
Just a second.
I can't hear now. Sorry.
Sorry,
Right.
Tata. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, was Miss Mawere wanted to say something. I wanted to say something.
Sorry,
yeah, but okay. Let me go to Mawere and then I'll come to you. You know, my boy, and then I
think we only hijacked and ambushed Mr. Mavhinga. We had allocated 1 hour.
Yes, we are. It's now past, the hour.
Yeah, we have gone over. So first, in a democratic tradition, we are over the limit, and you give us an indication whether you want us to close now and then we resume it another time, or we give a few minutes more, and then we can then ask the final questions so that we don't have
Dewa, we've gone past by 13 minutes, now, right? So, for the sake of, wanting to have you back, on the program, tomorrow, is it okay if we end this in the next 17 minutes so that we just do 1.5 hours?
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Right.
So, Mr. Dewa, there's an issue here that you are very diplomatic with your language. That the issue of the Supreme Court, the dispute that went to court, need not have gone to court. That's what Charo is saying. The constitution of the MDC is quite clear and deliberate as to what should happen when a vacates office. What the Supreme Court did and the High Court did was just to confirm what the Constitution says, which is what the Americans are saying: follow your own Constitution. Mr. Dewa's voice, Mr. Mavhinga's voice is eloquent in its silence. Then now you seem to be blaming the judiciary for a dispute that had no legs to go to court on its own.
Right.
There are
Can I
people within the MDC. Yeah, okay, so that is one. Then we have Lennon.
Yes.
So raised an issue.
Yes.
Why?
He said, why is it difficult? Why is it so difficult for Chamisa to follow his own constitution? Will he follow the national constitution? Are we not missing another young Mugabe?
Okay, thank you. Let me explain. When you talk of the rule of law and of constitutionalism, it provides fundamental rights to everyone. So if there is a dispute in terms of reading of the Constitution, which has implications on the rights of people, it is in order for people to approach the courts. So I would not agree that the interpretation, the Supreme Court or the court's role was not relevant, because that is the function of the courts, to provide interpretation and clarity. And the courts should be independent. Let me put it that way. Right? Now, so there is no basis of saying this should not have gone to court. In fact, this matter went to the High Court, and there was a particular outcome. And then there was an appeal to the Supreme Court. That's how it works. Yes. So that we cannot take away people's rights to approach the court. What we need to be clear about is the role and the position or the status of the courts in Zimbabwe. Okay, they need to make up their minds with regards to that as well, in addition to their rights to approach the courts for their disputes to be resolved amicably. This is what the courts should do in democracies like the US or the UK. And if you feel aggrieved in a supermarket or something like that, or you feel you've been injured, you have to go to the courts, because these are the ones that have got the mandate to interpret the law. Okay.
Right.
Now,
okay, no, that's fine.
In terms of the issues with the MDC constitution, for those individuals involved, I cannot comment on whether or not they should have. This was up to them, right? But now, having invested in that process, in a legal process, it must be taken to a logical conclusion.
Right.
And for me as an observer, this is where I have a problem with investing in the legal process, which then at the tail end of it, there are some in their defense of dismissing the court outcomes would say it's a kangaroo process. You understand?
Yes. Yes.
Now, the idea of the courts being a kangaroo process,
after
when does it arise? Yes, because look, it was a presidential challenge that was there previously. So for me, and I've said this publicly, and I've said this to some of my friends who are in some of these political parties, I've said, please be clear in your communication about where the problem lies. Is the problem with the courts? Is the problem with the constitution? Is the problem with, because now it is not proper communication to simply say it's a kangaroo court when you have invested in that process, and it costs money. It costs, it's serious money for serious lawyers. You understand? So there is need for clarity on that.
Are you going to ask for sanctions for those who don't follow their constitution?
Sorry, come again?
Somebody is asking that. Are you going to tell the Americans to impose sanctions on the MDC?
Well, I'm not the judge of that, because what I'm saying is my pursuit, okay, my understanding of this scenario, right, is that the courts have got their mechanisms, right? What happens if you disregard a court order? What happens if you disregard the views of your supporters? What happens? There must be mechanisms inbuilt for that. I am not to say. What I am saying is that when you look at the broad framework of human rights, of constitutionalism, The duty bearer is the government of the day. And this is why we are no longer talking about former President Mugabe, and we're talking about ED and the current administration, because they are the duty bearers who must deliver from the point of view of government. But if there are consequences for private political parties, and if you read the Supreme Court judgment, Justice Patel, when he spoke about the need to make a pronouncement on that, on the constitutionality issues, he spoke about the possibility of the MDC one day being the government in power.
Yes, absolutely.
You understand? So certainly there are consequences. We need that to be clear. But for organizations, they need to be very clear about where they stand.
Where they stand.
To the rule of law. Yes, it must be clear.
Also, just a follow-up, on that before I ask my boy to bring in your last, contribution is on that issue. We've heard Douglas Monzora, Morgan Committee, talking about threats of violence, talking about all manner of threats that are being directed to them on the basis of them taking a stance or taking a position that is opposed to the rest of the people. Where do human rights activists stay? How come we have not seen any statements out there or any comments coming out condemning those threats that are being directed towards these members of the opposition?
Well, Angoje, if you go back to February 2018, Human Rights Watch, my organization, issued a clear statement upon the violence in Bohera, Kwanerutanga, at the burial of former leader Morgan Tsvangirai. We were very clear and categorical that violence has no place in democratic spaces. And this is on record. So what we're saying is that and I spoke to Thokozani Kupe, I spoke to people implicated, I called out the leadership of the MDC on the issue of the Vanguard movement and on the allegations of violence that had been raised. So this is on record. It's not, we do not beat about the bush when it comes to issues of violence. And if you look at the issue of internal democracy, internal contradictions within the opposite political parties, there have been. This is not the first time. There have been problems in terms of splits and reunions. You know that, and this is why I'm saying there is need for the movement to resolve these internal contradictions. But when it comes to human rights abuses, which we investigate, which we confirm, we call it out, because there is no space where we can say these abuses should be overlooked. And so we have out, and I have been on record, and I can give you the statements that I've made on the issue of violence.
Absolutely. Yeah, if I can allow my boy, we've got about 7 minutes. So if you can have the person to Dewa 2 minutes, and then we give you the opportunity to answer, and then we wrap up the show.
Thank you very much, Uncle. I just want to ask Dewa, understanding kuti ruzivo rwega haruna kukwana. Tiri kuziva zvese zvidambudziko and tinotori nemanotes nemareference ekuti pachazvarwa maPhD akawanda neruzivo chete how bad things are in terms of us following mutemo, bumbiro remutemo, and applying it. So action and critical mass. Critical mass inoitwa tichitera ani. How is that? I'm interested in next steps in towards resolution. Understanding there's still a lot to understand, that there's still a lot that I want to learn. But to quote Wolfgang Goethe, akati, knowing is not enough, we must apply. And chito vanhu obho vari kuda, but tumapato twacho twerudo rwekuda kuita zvinhu hatuna kukwana. Willing is not enough, we must do. So do
Right.
we have to? That's my last question, and I want to thank you very much for allowing me to abuse you. I now
Okay,
know
thank
you're
you.
not just a paid person, you're a true human rights activist.
Dewa,
I think
I hope we are not abusing you.
no, that's okay. No, that's okay. I think
Right.
the thing is, we do not all have to be politicians. Each and every one of us in our own spaces, we can do something to contribute to constitutionalism and to respect for these values of human rights. It begins in the family. It begins in our church spaces, in our social soccer spaces. It begins in our different groups in society. Because look, human rights is become, a politicized and bastardized word in Zimbabwe. But it's about everything. It's about life, Miriam. It is about making sure that, migrants in South Africa have got access to food in this lockdown. It's about, health issues under this context of COVID-19. It's about the people of Harare, in Budiliro, in Epworth, in Chitungwiza, having access to sufficient clean water. All these things, like one activist said, human rights begin with breakfast. So we must know that bread and butter issues are human rights issues. And we must know that, it's not just about what are called, the civil and political rights, discourse. It's about property rights. It's about having a better life. The idea of a constitution that embodies this. And I wrote recently an opinion piece in the Zimbabwe Independent about the core of the liberation struggle movement. It was about human rights. It was about the right to land, to majority rule, to non-discrimination, to non-racism, and to equality in its fullest form, to Black people being able to own and have their own property, land, farms, things like that. Okay, so this is what we need to focus on, to say in primary schools, in secondary schools, let us learn about being a full citizen. But for many years, Zimbabweans have been treated as subjects and not as citizens, and as people who should not be able to speak out. And when you don't speak out, your rights are throttled. And one of the problems, colleagues, has been that Zimbabweans are a resilient people who adapt to any situation. A Zimbabwean at the core is a person who has come from the village, from the rural community, and who says, okay, I am in Harare. I don't have electricity to cook on the stove. I will find firewood to make ends meet. I don't have water. I will have to drill a borehole. If you can't afford a borehole, you can dig a well with your bare hands. This is how Zimbabweans try and adapt to all kinds of situations. If there are no clinics, even pregnant women are forced to deliver in backyards. So this kind of resilience has come at a huge cost, because people are not making the connection between constitutionalism, their human rights, and lack of access to these basics. Now, if you ask, the group of UK returnees, the 65 or 24, who were taken to Belvedere Teachers College, people are saying basic services like access to running water is a luxury. They don't realize that everyone has the right, and you've got serious media people, unfortunately, like Trevor Ngube of the AMH publishing house, saying that send them back to the UK. What kind of rubbish is that? People don't understand that as citizens, we have rights that are imbued in us simply because we are human. And one of them is to return to your own country with no questions asked. And the government must support. And now they are saying, just to get water is a luxury. That is not acceptable.
Right. Thank you very much. On that point. Right. We've got roughly under a minute. Ms. Mawere, you can come in with your seconds, closing remarks.
Okay, I just want a quick one that there's a question. What is mootness? And
right. What is for somebody asked that. What is
Okay.
the
Okay, in law, I think in basic terms at law, if something is said to be moot, it means simply that it's silent or almost irrelevant in terms of having been overtaken by events or by the passage of time. So, for example, I'll give you an example. If a pregnant woman who is 8 months pregnant applies to the court that she wants a right to deliver in a particular space, okay? And then the court takes 3 months to come to a judgment. And then by the time the judgment is delivered, the woman has already given birth to the child. So what the judgment is no longer relevant to the needs of that particular person. That is mootness. But in the discussion of the Supreme Court judgment, to say what is the value of handing down a judgment which could have been overtaken by events. But remember, this appeal, this case was launched after the elections, and the judges were actually looking at the results of the July 2018 elections.
Yes.
Okay, and then they said the only reason, or the main reason why it had to be addressed was to look at values of democracy and constitutionalism for future generations. Yes.
Yes. Right. Iowa, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Finally, thank you very much. I just wish to thank you because there are people who are thanking you for agreeing to come because you were typing and they couldn't see you, but you were following the show.
Yes.
Maybe on this aspect, in order to develop a culture of constitutionalism and critical mass, you agree that we have few people like you in the marketplace who the public actually understand what is constitutionalism, because it's unfortunate that we are dealing with the constitutional issue in relation to a political party where temperatures are high. But it's a double-edged sword. I'm not sure whether you also agree that it gives a unique opportunity to put a spotlight on constitutionalism than never before.
Yeah.
Right.
I would agree. Right. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is the time that we had for you. This is only the beginning of these shows. Today is part 1 with the Dewa. We hope to bring him back again on the program where we are going to be continuing this conversation. I want to thank my boy. Thank you very much for coming through and representing our Zimbabwean women. We value you. Ms. Mawere, thank you very much for coming through. Dewa, thank you very much. On that note, yes, for now, this is not the end of it. Trust me, we are coming back with more shows. For now, I'll say good night and God bless.
Asante sana, thank you.
Thank you.
Dewa, you just had to,
Always coming.
Yes, baby, God bless. Thanks. Bye.